Hi, everyone. It is so glad to have you joining us for this conversation. We are talking to a guest today, a special guest today, who is going to be telling us about her journey as a Foreign Service spouse, as many of us are, but how she has managed to not just make being a trailing spouse look awesome and amazing, but also how she has managed to stay professionally fulfilled. So please welcome Scotney Young. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Susie. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. And I would love to hear a little bit about you and your professional background before you were in the Foreign Service.
Before I was in the Foreign Service. Great. Yeah. Yeah, I'm Scotney. I'm originally from California. I am definitely have kind of a mixed background professionally, even before the Foreign Service. But so I have a master's degree in social work, specializing in family therapy, and I was doing family therapy with military families for a couple years, kind of toward the end of grad school and right after. I also took a job a little bit after that as a university campus hall director. So I got to supervise RAs and live on campus and develop kind of student life curricula and development um, trainings and classes and workshops, as well as doing student adjudication for students who violated campus policy, that type of thing. So I was doing that and kind of trying to figure out which direction to go into next. And I had applied for the Peace Corps, and I got Corps, and I was sent to Peru. And I lived in northern Peru for 3 years. Well, I lived in northern Peru for 2 years in a small kind of desert town where I started in sexual health education, HIV prevention, girl empowerment programs, and then youth leadership development. And then I decided to stay an additional year. And so I was a 3 year Peace Corps volunteer, but on my third year, I got to move to Lima, Peru. And I was working in the main office, the Peace Corps office in Lima, Peru, and training the volunteers as they came in. And so that is actually where I got invited to an embassy event, and I met my husband, who uh, my mom was like, "Oh, you met a Peruvian guy?" And I was like, "No, I met a white guy from Illinois, but he's here, also in Peru." And and so we got married shortly after that, and I've been at EFM for about 10 years now.
Wow. So congratulations then.
Thanks.
And how many you've been in how many different countries then? Peru?
Peru, we went to Afghanistan right after that. We went to Guatemala right after that, and then to DC for 3 years, and then Uganda now, which is where we're at now, and waiting to find out where we're going next.
Oh, you're stuck in the bidding
Yeah.
murk. Well,
Yes.
hopefully you find out very soon and
Yeah,
that
we're
you get
hoping.
what you're hoping for. But
Mhm.
I'm really curious how you have like what is your role now?
Thanks. Yeah, so currently I'm an independent consultant. I work in sexual reproductive health and gender-based violence prevention. So kind of calling on my social work roots and then combining that with the experience that I had in Peru, working with young people, doing sexual health education, talking about healthy relationships as kind of an avenue to prevent gender-based violence. I really kind of leaned into that. And so now I have we work with nonprofits, schools, international organizations, any type of organizations to create and support programs that serve youth and parents in understanding, related topics like puberty, consent, boundaries, healthy relationships, really those kind of core safety skills that young people need that are often overlooked in like a traditional education system. So, that can be anything from consulting a gender-based violence nonprofit to help improve their program structure or do grant writing. I've also helped develop safeguarding curriculum for the international school here in Uganda, where I'm at currently. I've partnered with the local literacy program to write a children's book about consent and rejection and how to handle those big feelings. So yeah, that's kind of what I do now and the work that I enjoy the most.
So, I mean, that's very related to what you were doing before, but it's not exactly the same.
Yeah.
And if you were to tell a brand new or an incoming family member, listen, your job is going to be different than what you think it will be. What would you like? What are a couple things that you would say to them that they would still be able to be professional, feel professionally fulfilled, and be completely changing their job, mostly for the most part, like every 2 or 3 years?
Yeah. Yeah, it's the struggle is real. And so I think, everything that I've talked about is my passion, right? When I was in DC, I was managing a domestic violence prevention program for 3 years while we were there, and that was great. But then we had to leave, and I had to change again, right? And so this work, and especially this topic, I'm very passionate about. But as an EFM, it's not always my job. Like a lot of EFMs, as you mentioned, I've had to pivot depending on what's available, how long our post is, frankly, what we could afford, our financial needs at the time. So early on, I still had pretty significant student loans. So waiting to find the perfect job really wasn't an option. And our first assignment was Afghanistan, which if you brought your spouse had to work and had to have an EFM position. So in Kabul, I was the GSO travel and housing assistant, which has, very little to do with social work and sexual health education. Um, but it definitely gave me quite a lot of insight into how the embassy works, which was very helpful going forward. Having had that GSO experience firsthand, even though it's a little bit different in most other posts than it was in Afghanistan. But also, I was able to use that time to do an online postgraduate program through the University of Michigan in sexual health education. And so that's also been a part of my journey is being flexible with the job that I'm doing while being really intentional about keeping a foot in the field and the work that I love, and staying connected to that somehow. It's, even though I don't always get to work directly in the field or on the project that I want to, being able to do some consulting on the side or volunteering or a training or an online program or teaching. There's a lot of places now that, you can sign up to do a webinar or you can present at a conference or something like that. Those kinds of touch points, staying connected, it meant that whenever we did get to a place where I could maybe find more opportunities related to my interests, I was kind of ready to jump in. Because to be honest, our CVs and our resumes as EFMs are just a patchwork of
Exactly.
of random things, right? In Guatemala, I was working as the INL technical report writer and managing the counter narcotics aviation accreditation process. So nothing to do with anything that I am interested in or want to do long term.
Yeah.
But again, it, helped with financially, it helped me feel like I was doing something, even though I was still trying to network, and I was volunteering at a local teen mom and sexual reproductive health program in Guatemala during that time. So it's hard, but I think if there are things that you really love doing, there are still ways to stay connected to those things for when the right opportunity comes along.
Right. Oh, that's all so valid. And there's so many little like gold nuggets in what you just said. Um, Scotney, I wonder, like, how do you do your networking? Like, do you start like reaching out to, I don't know, NGOs and IGOs before you get to a country, or the school? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on, my intentions. But I do feel like the importance of networking in this lifestyle like cannot be overstated, right? Like we are in a place for such a short amount of time. If you're not actively and intentionally networking, you're not going to get very far in terms of finding different opportunities. And I think it's just been so key to building any sort of really portable career or being able to maintain like I said, doing work in my interested field and stuff I'm passionate about. And I don't just mean professional networking, right? Because you also need to social network because those circles overlap a lot in the international environments that we're in. And so before I arrive at Post, I join every WhatsApp group, every Facebook group that I can find, parent groups, neighborhood groups, professional groups, anything that can help me understand who's there now, what's going on. Of course, I mute all of those notifications or I'll go crazy. But just to join them and kind of like see what's happening, start to put myself out there a little bit. Also, your hobby groups, right? I joined the rock climbing group and I just joined a writing club and that type of stuff. And I'm an RPCV, so I can connect to the Peace Corps presence that, there wherever we're going. And then once I get to Post, I start kind of putting myself out there, like literally, like I ask people to grab coffee or lunch. Um, I go to events. I just really get to know other people. And, out of genuine curiosity, what brings people there and how have they gotten to do the work that they're doing there? And then letting them know what I do and not being shy about saying, hey, do you know anyone who works in this field or who's looking for this or that? And just always talking about what I do and what I'm interested in. That used to feel a little bit awkward, like I'm like overly promoting myself, but it works. You really don't know who you're, socializing with or interacting with, who knows who. Um, and so it does work to, I was talking to someone at a dinner, a networking dinner that I went to here, and they were like, "Oh, let me connect you with the school counselor at the big international school because they're looking for, that type of programming." And so then, that's how I made that connection and was contracted to do some sex ed and puberty education for the big international school. So you really never know. And most people overseas, I have found, are usually really well networked and happy to connect with you, especially outside of the embassy community. Um, and the embassy community is great because you don't feel like you're alone. You have interacted with people who are going through it, have gone through it. But also the folks that are in that area, expats, locals, anyone else that might have a broader pulse on what's going on, it's good to connect with as well. And I will say, I have to give credit to my husband. He's usually one of my best advocates and cheerleaders. And I talk a lot about what I do and what I'm interested in with him as well. And so, when he's in the broader international community, like he carries my business cards and we'll hand them out if it's whenever it's appropriate and doesn't conflict with his portfolio. But yeah, so I would say putting yourself out there, making those connections. I will also say, speaking of my husband, he always talks about how he's like, guys can't do that. They can't just invite each other out for coffee or lunch. It's weird. And I'm like, I'm sorry. So I don't know for our, our male EFMs, I don't know if that's awkward, but hopefully there's a way you can frame it as, informational interview or just kind of getting to learn more about the city or whatever the thing is. But I think it's worth it to meet in person with people.
No, I agree. I think there's so much value in being face to face, and the conversation just feels like it just flows a lot better. Um, and it also helps that, like, I mean, whatever country you're in, like Uganda is Anglophone, right? So you can like pretty much communicate with I would say probably 99% of the people that are there. Maybe less so for a francophone country or a
Right.
country where the language is Spanish and you might not be fluent, but nonetheless, like people want to be able to communicate. And I think in my experience, the international groups tend to be really wanting to make connections, right? Like
Hmm.
they want to help you because they know that if they connect you with someone who, it has a need for the kind of services or education that you can offer, then they have just bettered that organization and the people that you're reaching. And so it's
Yeah.
it's like people want to help you because they know you will help other people. It's not just because, they want to help you get money in your pocket, which maybe is a nice perk and a side
Yeah.
benefit. But no, I think that's really valuable. One of the takeaways I had from what you said was, and this is something I am working on, and not my skill set yet, but you have to have thick skin. You have to be able to go
Hmm.
up and put yourself out there. And maybe they're like,
Hmm.
they don't want to communicate with you, or they don't want to
Hmm.
hang out with you, or they don't want to chat with
Yeah.
you, or they don't want to meet you for coffee. And then it's like,
That
well,
happens.
what did I do? Like, what? Why don't you want to meet with me? I'm a nice person. So
I
it's really
know.
important to have that thick skin.
Yeah, a bit, definitely. I mean, the more you do it, the easier it gets, and you're just like, oh, okay, well, they're busy. It's fine. Like, I won't make it about me. But yeah, no, it's not easy. And especially if it's new to you. So, have grace with yourself, but you gotta try. You gotta start somewhere.
Well, your path very closely resembles my path in that, like, sometimes you have to take the job that has the least resistance, and sometimes that is the embassy job. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and what I can say to any EFM out there, please, 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 please get into the Foreign Service
Foreign
Family
Service
Reserve
Reserve.
Corps,
Yeah.
because it will get you into a position exponentially faster than if you are not in the FSFRC, because it's just like those few admin steps, but
Yeah.
also you carry your clearance with you.
Your clearance with you. Yeah, one thing that is hard about that I think people sometimes miss though is that um, if you do get in the FSFRC and you take that embassy job and then you take a different job, technically you lose the FSFRC. And so you do have to start over, which is what happened to me. When I was in Guatemala, it was during the first hiring freeze. And so I had to take a contracting job. It was at the embassy, so I thought it'd be fine. But they were like, oh no, that's not an EFM job. So you lose your FSFRC and the clearance you have isn't gonna, transfer with you. So just something to be aware of. But it does help so much because, that security clearance if you're in a 2-year assignment and it's taking months, that's a big
Mhm.
change. So, but yeah, it's not always it's like you said, it's like sometimes it's a path of least resistance, sometimes it's the best financial option. Um, but you can get a lot from the EFM jobs, and some folks find really meaningful careers, as an EPAP or consular adjudicator or something like that. Um, but if it's not aligned with, your passion or your interest, I think that's okay too. I think kind of the emotional truth of it all is that it's not always a professionally fulfilling experience. It can be at times, there's ups and downs, right? It's not always easy balancing your professional identity with being an EFM. You
Yep.
can love the foreign service lifestyle, you can love everything that it offers, you can love your spouse, and you can still feel very frustrated and restricted by the impact it has on your career, right?
Yep.
And both of those things can be true at the same time, and that's worth acknowledging. I spent the last couple years deciding and applying for, and I even made it to the interview stage to become a USAID FSO and the health and HIV prevention programs, and potentially like be a tandem couple. And I got a 3-year PSC or contract job with our local USAID office, kind of to prepare. And then in an instant, that was all gone with the changes from this year. So for me, like, I just really have to make room. And this is what I've told other EFMs too, is like, you have to make room to feel that loss and to feel that frustration when things are kind of out of your hand or harder than you expected. There's different obstacles than you expected. You have to give yourself room to process that and, be okay with being bummed about it.
And it's so valid to have those concerns and feelings. And then what I also think is really important is to talk to your spouse about that, because without having those like ongoing conversations about that, then a little bit of angst, maybe resentment, that sort of, it starts to build, because you do have to either put your career oftentimes on hold or completely pivot and aim towards something else. And it can be a little frustrating when I can't say that, when I was a little girl, I dreamed of being insert what I have done for the last 25 years.
Right,
So,
exactly.
but it is what it is. And, our spouses hopefully all know and appreciate the sacrifices that we are giving, and support us in our endeavors, which is always very, very important. Scotty, I think this has been, hopefully an enlightening and uplifting conversation for our fellow EFMs to listen to. And I really appreciate your inputs.
Thank you. Yeah, I really it's always nice to speak to other EFMs who, understand this struggle and are kind of going through it or have gone through it or are about to go through it, right? I think one really important thing to remember, and kind of goes along with what we were saying, is to give yourself grace and to recognize like the really like immense amount of courage that it takes to basically like rebuild and reinforce our professional identities every time we PCS. And like, unlike our spouses, we don't get a handshake before we go somewhere, right? We don't have an office sponsor when we get there. We have to do it ourselves again and again. So like, however you are making it work for you is something to be proud of. You don't have to, follow some perfect trajectory, some perfect professional path that you hoped for. But that doesn't mean that you're not making progress and developing yourself as the professional that you want to be someday. So, or that you are currently.
I could not have said it better myself. Thank you very much for that. And may all of you weather through your job interviews that you don't choose to face for the 3rd and 4th time. Give yourself grace. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for joining, Scotney. And we will all come back here and listen again.
Yeah. Thanks, Susie.